How do you reflect on this and the importance of the announcement, which was confirmed by the Prime Minister, the President and the British leader?
Historic is a word that comes to mind, Kieran. I think it's an overused term, but in this case it is absolutely apt. The Prime Minister speaks of forever friends. We are heading down a path now with our two oldest friends and greatest allies to join together to develop in what is an historic tripartite defence agreement with a nuclear-powered submarine as the first of many initiatives. And this will join us at the strategic hip from this day to the end of days.
We heard Greg Moriarty at the news conference saying that this is just the first technology, that there will be others which will be following suit, like quantum or artificial intelligence, things like that. How big is the scope for cooperation and interoperability on that?
Well, if you think of the issues that were announced today, not just quantum, not just artificial intelligence, cyber hypersonics, cruise missiles, surface or air-to-surface missiles, ground-to-ground attack weapons, that is a very wide geostrategic focus, which gives you an idea of the strategic depth that we're now taking this relationship across three great friends. And it will be enduring, because once we start this process, especially on the first project, being nuclear propulsion for submarines, which is what the Brits did in the 60s, it will be ongoing and it will be enduring.
I asked the Prime Minister about this at the news conference today, but I'll ask you as well. We have ANZUS, now we've got Aukus, and the fact is, though, there's no binding commitment to show up. If you get a president that maybe isn't as supportive of alliances, isn't it better to have something like the Article 5 in the NATO treaty, which requires collective defence? If someone's attacked, everyone has to show up to help.
Well, the ANZUS treaty makes it very clear that an attack on one is an attack on all. And we've got a number of strategic engagements and agreements, not just the Five Eyes structure, not just ANZUS, not just the Quad, but of course our deep strategic ties with our ASEAN friends and of course our Pacific Islands family that is so very dear to us. These structures have stood us in good stead for a very long time. And every time we've needed support, we've called on it and it's been answered. And I think the history of our engagements, our relationships, our agreements show the strength of them. And more importantly now, where we're going with Aukus shows the great strength again, with three leaders standing together, committing long-term, committing to the lives of their children and their grandchildren to stand beside one each other as freedom-loving democratic nations of the world. And I think that's pretty special.
A senior government source said to me, though, after the announcement that this would not have been achieved if Donald Trump was re-elected because of his volatility, and it would not have happened if not for Brexit, if the UK was still in Europe.
These are all hypotheses and ideas. What we do know is that this morning at 7 o'clock our time, the Prime Minister led the press conference with the US President and the UK Prime Minister to announce something truly extraordinary, something that will outlive us all and is designed to give geostrategic certainty to our nation in a time of some uncertainty. And that is historic.
We see the unemployment rate today. If we move our focus back to your area of responsibility as Minister for Employment, the rate's fallen, but the number of jobs fell dramatically given the participation rate is off in a huge way because of the lockdowns. How hard is it going to be for us to see another V-shaped recovery? Is that possible?
Absolutely, it's possible. Kieran, we've seen each time the numbers have come out all throughout the year. There's been enormous volatility, and that's all been driven by lockdowns and COVID responses. And every time the lockdown is finished, we saw the economy roar back. Today's numbers is a story of lockdowns, of New South Wales in complete lockdown during the reporting period, Victoria going into lockdown, Queensland coming out. It's a story of over 170,000 jobs lost in New South Wales, but 29,000 jobs gained in Victoria, even though during the reporting period, Victoria, of course, was going into lockdown. So we see the capacity for the economy to roar back, why it's so important to get vaccinated, so important to hit 80%, so important to get those borders down. And I believe today, first dose across the country is at 70%. So we can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, Kieran, where we'll see the economy roar back, and it will. And it's shown that time and time again.
Now, you have been across that technology for the COVID app and interoperable, well, the same term we used for the previous discussion, but this being interoperable across state borders for their QR codes. Is that something that can be achieved with the vaccine certificates?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about it in two terms, we'll be producing a vaccine certificate internationally. Right now, for example, you've got a little yellow vaccination card. If you go to Africa, you have to have yellow fever. There is an ICAO, International Civil Aviation Authority, standard on how the world can understand and accept each other's vaccination. And there's a certified standard for that. We'll have that ready to go when our borders open. So Australians travelling internationally will have a certificate able to be read with their passport overseas. And of course, domestically, we've agreed with states and territories that will provide the data of vaccination status, so your record of immunisation, through to state and territories, their current QR checking apps or their service apps. And that way, if a state requires certain public health orders, you can check in using a state-based app and show your vaccination status all at the same time, or with a simple customer experience through those state-based apps.
Are you comfortable with the way this is unfolding, where you've got some jurisdictions like the Northern Territory saying you can't come to the top end unless you've had the 2 jabs, some companies saying you can't use our services, whether it be airlines or even the roulette table at the Crown Casino, unless you've had the 2 jabs? Is this the way it should unfold, or should there be a bit more guidance federally?
Well, the states are responsible for public health orders. The states are responsible for their occupational health and safety legislation. So each state is responsible to make those decisions, and those powers have not been ceded to the Commonwealth. Therefore, they do sit with the states, whether we accept it or not, or like it or not. That's where the powers sit. So the states should be the ones who make determinations. The states should be the ones using their technology with, of course, the record of immunisation provided into it. Therefore, a citizen can respond to state law, state requirements, and state occupational health and safety needs. That's just the way the Commonwealth is built, Kieran, why it's called a Commonwealth, federated model of states.